Okay, I'm gonna make sure people get to the right room first before I get started, because they're expecting this to be Todd's workshop instead of mine. He's using mine and I'm using his, because there's different emails to get sent up every workshop, and he's doing 2, so we accessed the wrong one today. But that's okay, we'll figure it out. See if we get in. So I couldn't get in because he'd already started, and I would interrupt his and make it stop recording if I did.
Sessions.
Okay, let me mute them all real quick and let them know.
Workshops. So I'm going to talk.
So real quick, everyone who's trying to get on here, if you're expecting Todd's ArcGIS Pro, we actually need to use my timing, plant cell timing one to get into his, because he's using my link. So if you're expecting Todd, go back to the website and go to the link for the plant cell timing is everything, and then you'll get into Todd's ArcPro one. Okay, sorry about that. And Chris, were you expecting this one to be plant cell timing is everything?
So I'm going to.
So you're going to go to the ArcPro,
okay.
And that will be mine. So at least we can record it, and then we can just change the name when we put it onto the website, at least. So this one's plant cell timing is everything, everyone, as you're coming in. Okay, that's what this one is. If you're expecting Stacy's, you got to go back to Cypress. We switched this morning. That was part of the session this morning.
Recording in progress.
This one's plant cell timing is everything, Rusty. Well, I switched this morning with Stacy. She's back in Cypress in the main ballroom area, back that way.
Okay.
Okay, that was funny the other day.
So it's only me.
Yep, because they're all expecting Todd's is mine.
Oh. Should I go in the other one?
Maybe we'll just text Todd. I don't know. He won't get it though. Where is he? Which one is he in? Which room is he supposed to be in? Right now.
Let me leave this one and I'll go to that one and say something.
Okay.
Hopefully he hasn't started
Put it in the chat box.
yet.
Put in the chat
Hey,
box.
you guys are so great to me.
Just returning the favor for all those great ideas you get.
I know. Yeah, great one. I'm gonna wait just a few more minutes, you guys, because some people are online in Todd's ArcPro and expecting it to be mine. So we're trying to get them into this one before I start. Okay, so a few more minutes before we start. Hopefully, oh, there's 2 people in the waiting room here now. So let's see if maybe that's what they're expecting, I hope. Oh no, you're trying to get into mine again.
Oh, I need to go to plant sale.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one you need to go to.
Yeah.
So this one's plant cell timing is everything as you're coming in. Or I'll get started and then I'll keep checking.
Please wait for the host to start.
So he's trying to let you in, but he didn't pay attention to the fact that people are still trying to get in.
That means that is that what it says if I'm in the waiting room?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, while we're getting other people in the room, I'll go ahead and get started. There we go. So the workshop today, I have to sit up here because we have to have the voice for the computer so we can record this. Otherwise, I would be standing as well. Plant cell timing is everything. And I'm sure all of you are interested in finding out what times of year you might do certain things or what kind of your schedule can be to help prepare for a plant cell with a specific date in mind. And so that's what this workshop is going to be about for you. What are some things that I do before we start the growing season? What are some things I do during the growing season? as we're getting closer to plant sale, those couple weeks out, and then the days leading up to plant sale, what are some things that I help students do so they can help run a successful plant sale for the community? My name is Tam Workham, if you didn't notice, and I teach 3 greenhouse management classes at Mount Baker. This next year, we're going to be on trimesters, and I'm going to have 1 class that's going to be from the beginning of December to the first part of March, and then 2 classes that will run the first part of March and go to the end of June, or till the end of the school year. So for me, I'm also going to have to rearrange how we schedule things that students are going to do, because halfway through 1 class, I'm going to get 2 different ones that don't know anything about the plants or anything we've also started. And it worked that way too with COVID this year. 2 weeks before plant sale, I got my 4th quarter class. So it was kind of interesting how that worked out. But honestly, the kids love plants. And so they were really great about just jumping in there and getting going. The other thing that this workshop will do is to help us share some ideas as well. And before we get started today, I want to make sure that all of you get a chance to think about what are some ways you can help students plan, because my goal is always to be allowing students. There you go. Did you mute yourself? Okay. So it's allow students to have the most experience with the plant cell itself, and to put the burden on them as much as possible for managing a plant cell. You can't do everything as an ag teacher, and although managing a greenhouse can seem overwhelming at times, it's also really important to make sure the students do the work. So I'd like you to have a chance in your groups or tables that you are. If you are at a really small table and you want to join up with another group, I would really encourage you to do that. But I'd like you to share some ideas with your friends. What are some ways you help students plan? And then towards the end of the workshop, I'll ask this question again, and we'll see if things have changed for you with regard to what you can have students, you can do to help students plan. So go ahead and have a roundtable discussion for about 3 minutes, and then I'll go with the rest of the workshop. So have a chance to discuss at your table, please.
So I was at a workshop at Spokane Community College in our tour yesterday. They said they divide up the year in weeks, and I think that's brilliant. And so you know, this is when I want it, and then go back to the week. So you could have your students say, okay, here's their sale. When do we, and have them go through the process and have the year, like, these are the weeks of the year. I'm gonna do that. I, like, in my whole program, I think that's brilliant.
We've done like that with our seeds starting, because obviously we're starting those. I mean, the stuff that we order comes at a predetermined time that we have to determine in June at our conference, right? So everything just shows up. So I don't know if you could do, I mean, it wouldn't really be applicable for the next year, but if you had the kids like debrief after the plant sale maybe, and say, okay, well, how did these look? Do we need to adjust our dates for next year? Those same kids don't have any say in the ordering or the, I mean, they wouldn't come back to see the results of that, I guess, is what I'm saying.
But they could at least, if you let them know when certain, plugs are coming, and if they're planning the calendar with the seeds, they could at least have those dates in there, so that they're not, oh, the day these plugs are coming, we're supposed to be seeding this and this. So at least, even though there's some things that are more structured that they have to be prepared for, they could learn how to plan around times and events.
How would you have your students figure out how much to grow and what they should plant?
I based it off of last year's inventory. I actually share the inventory with the kids and let them know how much we had in inventory the previous year, so they know and can account for also germination rate and how much loss you have. And so I'll show them throughout the year, okay, this is the inventory we had at the beginning. This is what we actually had at plant sale. How much did we lose in between? So we account for loss too. So I show them the inventory from the previous year.
Just don't use the last 2 years.
I think that's applicable for even like floral sales. Like you can use the same floral sales.
Yeah.
Or if you grow for, that's what my plan is, to grow for those specific things. Oh, what about, how do you have to plan like when the hours and works they should be and who's doing what? Do your students figure that out, or do you just tell them when they sign up?
I mean, for the actual plant sale itself, I just list all the hours that we're gonna be open because our community expects, it to be pretty consistent each year, and they always know. And then the kids just sign up. But I always have like a cashier, and that person has to be the same person the whole time that day, things like that, because they have to work with the.
When you guys, because you guys, you are huge, do you have to have kids outside of the classroom come in to help plant and work?
No, because I have 3 greenhouse management classes that help manage all of the facility and the growing of that. So I don't have kids come in outside the school day to help with that at all.
Yeah, I usually don't, and the last 2 years have been different because I had to do a lot of it myself.
Yeah,
And they went
that's
out
true.
in March, what plugs we had in, but I had to seed all the vegetables myself. I had to, and kids couldn't come in, so.
Do your students help order soil and pots and restock things, or you kind of?
My soil order showed up Monday. I always use my funds from the plant sale to within that same calendar year. They make me do that. So I already have that. I know. See, those are all really good things that students really should plan.
I know. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get us back together. We'll have a chance to share out more ideas here towards the end, but I really would love for you to think about moving forward from here. What are some ways that students can help plan things? And I'll talk about some ways that I help with the greenhouse management class and what are some things that students specifically help with. So I'll keep going. So before the growing season starts, everyone, this is what my greenhouse looks like. It's a 3,000 square foot greenhouse, 30 by 100. It's got polycarbonate plastic, and I have a shade cloth over 2 tables inside the greenhouse to make sure I can provide a better growing experience for those plants that need full shade. But I start with a clean facility every single year. In some years, I've had the kids help me with that. It's not near as clean as when I do the facility, but they can help with part of it. And this year, one of our maintenance guys volunteered to help with the cleaning, and he pressure washed the entire inside cement walls for me and floor, which I was very appreciative of because usually that's my job to try and get done with the kids. Also, before growing season starts, I counted out 13 weeks out from plant sale. That is when our growing season starts for me. So I create an actual plant sale schedule. I fix the date of the plant sale, and ours is always the end of April. For me, our customers want really hardy plants, and I found over the years that if I grow them for that date in mind and then harden them off 2 weeks before plant sale, they flourish in our environment and our community with the weather that we get that time of year. Because we can still get some frost, clear into the first part of May. Plus, I'll be honest, it gives me a week off in between that and state convention. I get a weekend off in between. So I try to plan it for that in mind. But obviously we have to be flexible with students when it comes to creating this schedule. And I was having a new trimester schedule next year. I'm sure I'll have to be even more flexible with what I've done. But I also set that date on the district calendar so everyone in the community, including our staff, knows exactly when that date is before the school year ever starts. So other things that I do before the growing season starts is I order our plant starts and seeds in the fall to make sure that they are more available. I don't have to worry about them, someone else getting all of the orders in first, and then I'm left with whatever they have left over to order from. And I order from Ball Horticulture. When I work with them, the grower actually that they work with in my area is Van Wingerden's. So I get all of my start plants from Van Wingerden's. I go pick them up. I don't have to worry about shipping cost or boxing or unboxing or any of that. The plants are healthier as a result of that really close timeline to get to my facility. And it's about an hour drive from Deming to Blaine, where Van Wingerden's is, where the facility is that I pick them up. And I've done that the last couple of years, and I've really liked the quality of the plant material I get. As you guys can see out here, when they brought in the plants for the showcase, obviously they're very great quality. So I really appreciate that. I order my seeds from Ivy Garth. I work with them since I first started teaching. It's a company out of Ohio that I've worked with, and the prices are right for me. Plus, we've kind of cultivated the different types of plants that our community wants, and I can get those seeds specifically from that company. So I don't know that I will change who I get my seeds from, even though I did adjust who I got my starts from the years. The other thing that I do before the growing season starts is I order containers, soil, and supplies in the wintertime. I make sure that everything is there when we come back from Christmas break. So as I go into the new growing season, I want to make sure that I don't have to worry about not being able to plant something because there's nothing on hand for the kids to plant into. So all of that comes from either Stubers, which is in Snohomish County, and they will truck it up to me as long as I have a $500 order. Obviously, I have way more than $500 order going on. And so they actually ship it up to us at no cost to us because we have a large order. They drop it right outside the greenhouse. My students help bring it all in. And they are always surprised. Their eyes kind of pop out of their head when they realize how much stuff we actually have to order in order to make this sale successful. And then Hummert International is another company I work with to get supplies. That's where I get my pest traps from. That's where I order any chemicals that I need, or I ordered my baskets from them this year. I really liked the quality of the plastic containers or baskets I used for our plant sale, and was able to have a better quality basket as a result. And so I will definitely go with them again for my basket containers. Hummert International. And I've worked with them now for 15 years, so a long time. Now, the start of the growing season, it's important to start the growing season off right as well. This is the start plants that I got from Van Wieren's this year. And I actually had 2 pickups I had to do because things were available different weeks of the growing season from them. And so this is the big one that I got. And you can see some of the plants that are here. But as they come into our greenhouse, it's important to keep in mind you want to organize the space for the students to work in groups. So I try to make sure that these plants are all on a couple of tables that I want students to use. I don't want students to be using because I don't want them to have to rearrange things and move things around. So I'll put them on a table where I know they're not going to need access to. And then we pull from that table and put back from that table each class. So if a class doesn't finish planting a tray, then the next group finishes that before they start a new one. So it makes it a little bit more organized that way. I also set up a greenhouse layout, and I went ahead and put it in a Google Drive. I use just a PowerPoint, and I have put boxes and text boxes and kind of laid out our greenhouse, and then I print that out. So students know exactly where to place things when they get done, because each table is numbered in the greenhouse. So if they get done planting those plants, they can look at the layout and actually see what table number they're supposed to put it on without even me giving them any instruction on that. So it really helps to alleviate some of the questions that come up during class. If they're not sure where to place things, I'll just have them take a look at the layout themselves. And they're really good about placing things in the right spots in the greenhouse. It's also important to water and care for your young plant starts as they're coming in. One of the biggest mistakes I made when I was first starting out teaching is not caring for those plants enough when they first came into me initially, because it takes quite a few days to plant up this many starts. And so while they're waiting to be planted, I want to make sure that I'm giving them enough water, that I'm also giving them nutrients or fertilizer in between those times they would normally get into the ground and get fertilizer. I check for insects as soon as they come into our greenhouse. So I just take my hand and rub them across the plants. Anything that flies up usually flies up at that point. So I can see if I need to use any biological insecticide or safer soap to kind of get rid of those little eggs or smaller insects that are first starting to arrive in our greenhouse at that time. My grower I work with from Van Wieren's is really great about having protocols already in place to check for pests and things like that. So very rarely do I get them the pests in from them. All my pests come in because they're seeking a warm spot in the greenhouse and they find my greenhouse. And so we have to take care of them later. Other things that I do at the start of the growing season is I plan a schedule for planting seeds. So when I say I start 13 weeks out, that means that every week leading up to plant cell, ground zero is a week that I need to plan for planting seeds. And for my students, some of the seeds can be planted right away. Dusty Miller, Dianthus are ones that need a longer growing time in order to establish flowers and get to the size I want them to. Other ones, partway through the growing season, like petunias or my lobelia, can be planted a little bit later. And as we get closer to plant cell, marigolds, and then other types of annuals. The herbs I plant right away too. We grow our plants or herbs from seed. And so we get them to a smaller size by plant cell that are sellable and easy to manage. But I don't have to worry about trying to do it later in the season and not having them to the size I want. So week 13, we start our countdown basically to plant seeds. I also print out and order labels. For me, I like to color code so that kids know what prices things are. And so what I do is I use the return address labels that are clear from Office Depot, and I print them out on laser printer and print them all out, and the kids just pull off of there to label their plants. I don't have to worry about them handwriting things. I don't have to worry about penmanship or mislabeling. And it's really easy to do with the kids. And they appreciate the fact that it's quick and easy as well. And then also, I want to make sure I determine the container size before I plant things. I really don't want to transplant as much as possible during the growing season because it takes a long time to get some of the plants up to a growth stage. But I do want to make sure they're going to get to the stage I want them to. I don't want to put them in such a big container like a 1 gallon when I think they won't fill out. I'll put them in a 6-inch pot instead, like our geraniums, in order to get them to full bloom by plant cell. And they'll fill in that root space a lot faster. Question?
Are you attaching the labels to a?
It's a label, so a 4-inch label, and then the labels get just stuck right on there. Mm-hmm. What was that? They just go right in the pot. Right in the pot. Mm-hmm. Yep, it's slick and easy, and the kids really enjoy that part. So, any questions about the start of the growing season or anything like that?
How do you decide what you're going to start from seed versus what you're going to buy already started?
Okay, a good question. It depends on what I need that plant to be grown for. So for instance, anything that are smaller annual plants that I can grow in a 6-pack and sell for sale, I use seeds for. That includes herbs, that includes vegetable starts, and it includes small annual growth plants. Anything that needs to fill out in a 4-inch, 6-inch container or help fill up a basket or larger container, I grow from start because I need those plants to have a good established root system already when I get them going. And I want them to get to the size that we can price and make a profit at plant cell with students. So that's what we do. And just so you guys know too, I know everyone does their plant cell differently with how you pull financing to help run a plant cell. For us at Mount Baker, we run what's called Mount Baker Student Industries. All of our welding, ag mechanics, wood shop, and horticulture programs, including plant cell and floral design, run through Mount Baker Student Industries. The profit we make on plant cell helps run the next plant cell plus profit. So I'm constantly putting into a fund for our ag ed program that has nothing to do with ASB or ASB laws. And as a result, they don't have to question the fact that my students in the greenhouse management class do everything. And then they're getting the profit to run the next plant cell, or we use it to buy facilities or equipment that we need. Anything that goes back in is able for us to use the next year. Plus, that money never goes away. That account keeps building and building. So it's not like I have to spend it that next year. I can keep those funds and use them over multiple years if I want to. So that's something that Todd Rightmire, my CT director, set up for us to use.
I remember you talking about that before. How is it set up specifically, or and who runs it? I'm assuming you. But.
It's run as a separate account than our ag ed account. So it's part of our ag ed program, but in the CTE program, it's basically its own account, Mount Baker Student Industries. And so any POs I write come out of the account. Any funds I get go back into that account. So it's an account that Todd set up as a separate CTE account, basically.
Do you still have to do, or like through ASB, the officers
Nope.
have to approve
Nope.
anything?
It has nothing to do with ASB. It's an account for our program that runs through the school district. It has nothing to do with ASB or ASB law.
And was it easy to set up?
You'd have to ask Todd more about that as our CT director. He would give you tons of information about that because that's the way we've set it up so that we have more flexibility with our funds and when we use them different times of year to get around some of the ASB laws that I know a lot of you have, especially when it comes to paying for things or being able to use online accounts and things like that. This gets around all of that.
Do you know how it was initially funded? Do you just transfer from your main?
From
CT
probably initially
account?
funded from the main CT account, I'm assuming. That was before I actually started at Baker, which was 15 years ago. So it's my responsibility to manage my own Mount Baker Student Industries account. So in that we have separate plant cell, I have floral design or floral arrangement. He has the ag mechanics projects, and then our woodshop teacher has any projects that they do. So basically, although the money flows into the same account, I still have to manage my own expenses and profit and report to Todd, my CT director, how much profit we made off of our plant cell to make sure that we're not going into the red, things like that. So no, the money flows through the school district. They still take in the money through the school district account, Mount Baker Student Industries. In a normal year, we have run it so that I have cashiers that are helping take money at plant sale, and then I put all the money together for them to deposit it for me through Mount Baker Student Industries. But the last 2 years, we have used Square site to run our plant sale virtually. And although they take a small profit from Mount Baker Student Industries, I don't have to handle any of the money because everyone pays online on that site. And I don't have to manage any of that part. I just have to say, okay, these funds are ready. They transfer to that account that our school district has given me to use. And then it's all transferable. Great questions, you guys. Hopefully I'm answering them okay. Okay, so that's starting out the growing season. Now, during the growing season, there's quite a bit more that goes on. You can see for me, that's how many trays we had of seeds that were started this year. I use the trays that are 20 by, or that can hold 200 seedlings. And I prefer to plant them this way because then they can establish their own individual root space in the ground versus planting them in just a regular big container and having to separate them all later. This really helps students also transplant them correctly and make sure the root system is buried when we go forward. So during the growing season, this is my students this last year, 3 of them. We're masked up and ready to go. But you can see they've been transplanting some of the seedlings we got from Van Weerden's. They work on labeling. And I usually have them work in groups of 3 to 4 students at a table space. I tried to make it like 3. I don't like groups of 2 because then if they get mad at each other, there's no one else to help kind of thing. 3 is a good number though, 3 to 4. And they enjoy working together. And I do let them choose their own groups to work with. But I don't let them choose a location in the greenhouse that I have them set up to work. So if I know that 2 groups are going to be especially chatty back and forth, then I'll separate them at different ends of the greenhouse to work too. And that really helps.
How do you have them seed those trays?
I have them use, I got them from Cash and Carry. They're the little wooden stakes that are meant for caramel apples or the short ones. And I have them use those to see how deep they need to plant their seeds. They make holes in each one of those spots. So they put the soil in, they level it off to make sure everything is pushed into those pods or the individual spaces, and they water it, and then have them plant the seeds using those. And honestly, it's the best way to do it because the kids can actually visually see how far down they need to plant versus how big the seed is. So I talk about with them, okay, this seed is this size. This is how deep you should plant it to make sure it's going to germinate. And they keep an eye on whether or not their seeds. This plant's a competition to see whose seeds are going to grow first, honestly, in the greenhouse.
Do they mark it on the stick?
There's a label we put in each one of the containers. It's kind of the front part. And we'll use the same color label in the tray that's going to transfer to when they transplant. So they know exactly what color label to use when we transplant too. Yeah, Tara. I do not. I do not. I use, I mist them, but I do not have anything to cover them in the greenhouse to help them germinate. Yes. I do it. This, what was that? There are certain plants that I use heat mats for. I'm sure you'll see here in a few minutes in pictures. We have really large tomato plants that we grow for plant cell. The sweet 100s are as tall as I am, and they're fruiting out in big cages by plant cell. So in early January, with one of the classes, or with the greenhouse management classes, whatever classes I have at that time, we will transplant or plant our tomato seeds and pepper seeds. And those I put on heat mats to get them going because I want them to establish really well. But I also have a grow light over that particular table that's going to have enough candle wick for that table only, or candle light for that table. And I give them about 6 weeks of additional light to get them going because they need about 4 hours a day of additional light that time of year to help them get established. But otherwise, I keep them in the area, like you can see where they're located in the greenhouse. It's basically as you walk in with the kids, they're gonna be on the left-hand side. That's where the heat is gonna be the most successful because they're in front of the, they're not too close to the heater, but they're not so far away, they're not gonna get that warmth. So that's where they like to seed out. And that's just experience too, learning your greenhouse and knowing what parts of the greenhouse are cooler, which parts are warmer. That naturally happens. And so that's the part of the greenhouse they love the most to get started or established.
Those seed trays are just recycled plug trays?
They are, yes. I purchase these from Stuber's and make sure I have plenty each year, especially since a lot of times when students are transplanting, okay, they might not fully recover the seedling trays from that. So I order each year to make sure I have plenty on hand.
And then, that germination looks like 100% perfect. I'm thinking like even on my best day of teaching and demonstrating, I get like this leopard pattern germination. Yeah, that. So you make it a competition, like you teach them, demonstrate, do you make it a competition on who gets the germination?
I don't make it a competition. They naturally make it a competition themselves, honestly. And I also talk about with them, I'm like, okay, we want to have this many plants by plant cell. So I always have them plant a little bit more than we need to make sure we account for any germination loss or loss from then until plant cell date too. You have to worry about your loss that you might have naturally from insects or watering or whatever it is. But they really, once they get going, they're really great. I mean, they've been really great for me about planting seeds correctly. So I reuse trays or things that have come back to me from I'm talking about from other people, community members, only if they're ours to begin with. I don't take other containers that were from other growers or nursery plant containers or anything like that. If they're ones that started with us, then I'll take them back because then I know that they'll fit on our tables correctly and spacing and everything else. Plus they have the amount of space I need for root space for those plants. So those are the only ones I let the community recycle back to me. And if they give me others, they don't ever go in the greenhouse. They go right into the trash bin. I never bring them into the greenhouse. So they love to donate them back. Also, during the growing season, as we all know, during the growing season, it's also important to teach seed planting methods. I was just talking about that, but also to have the students help manage the facility each day. So the last 7 minutes of class, and I set my timer to make sure I don't forget on my phone, and they will go ahead and clean up their entire area, sweep the floor, get all the tables cleaned off with their watering wands, and get the table set up for the next group. That was even more important this year with COVID regulations because I had 2 greenhouse management classes in a row. And I was required to go through and use ethyl alcohol to spray down their their table space where they were working, as well as the end of the hose area or where the handle is where they were using it, and the handle on the soil scoop for each class. So the kids helped me with that. It was really great to have everything clean, and all I had to do was spray. And then I was lucky to have that as my 10-minute break for breakfast in our schedule, so I could kind of get things done and ready for the next class coming in. But it was really good. Also, I keep track of inventory, and I had the kids help me with this. So when they get done planting a seedling tray, they're required to record down on our inventory sheet how many they actually planted on container wise. That way we can track it throughout the entire growing season and see how much loss we had too. Some years we've had more than others. It's dependent on sunlight and bug infestation and all these other things that might affect you in the normal greenhouse. But I have them help me keep track of inventory. And then the final countdown to plant cell, I'll talk about, we'll do inventory later as well. And then I also start each class with teaching new skills. It can get kind of boring for students to go out there every single day and have to transplant for long periods of time. So no matter if I'm going to have them eventually do transplanting that day, I start each class with a new skill I want them to do. Whether it's checking for the root growth, so I'll bring up a plant and I'll show them the root growth on the plant and showcase that. We'll talk about how to check for insects or diseases on the plants. I will also have them keep track on their skill sheet. They'll actually write down the things that we talk about so they know what to do skill-wise in the future. And the kids that have been in my class before, I have them help teach those skills. So that way, the ones who are experienced in the greenhouse and already have that knowledge, you can teach their peers, and it makes them feel cool also, and to be able to do those things. Okay, also during growing season, I'm gonna try and put up a few much here. These are actually students that were transplanting our baskets this year. I do grow our plants for baskets for a while in 4-inch containers to get them root system established. And then we transplant 4 4-inch containers into a 12-inch basket for plant sale to grow. We went to that this year. I think previously I had a 10-inch basket, and they were getting, the root system wasn't growing as well. And with this year, trying something new and having new containers from Hummer, they really flourished for plant cell. And so I really enjoyed that. But during the growing season, it's important to post pictures on social media as you're doing things. Question real quick?
So how long do you put them in a 4-inch container from the plug and then transplant?
So plugs come in for those ones beginning part of February, second week in February. And I had them transplant the baskets 6 weeks out from plant cell. So it's a countdown. So about 6 weeks, 5 to 6 weeks. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, they're about this size. Round wise, they're about this tall when I transplant them or have the students transplant them. But I post pictures on social media. The ones that are the most liked are the ones that have the students in them. Because if you're just posting only pictures about your greenhouse and nothing with the students in them, the community want to see the students in. They're definitely the ones on the Facebook posts that I do for our Mount Baker Plant Cell Facebook page that are most liked, is those ones there. Because there's a lot of family members and community members that also like to see those students, that, the relatives and things. And so they'll help post pictures too or share things for me. I also pinch back plants at least once. I know that it's important to pinch back plants, but I have found over the years that I pinch them back too many times. They don't establish buds fast, or flowering becomes problematic leading into plant cell. And I really want to make sure I have a lot of color at our plant cell, especially on those annuals that if you don't have color, they don't purchase them. So I only pinch back plants once, I'll be honest. A lot of that also is just timing and how much time you have kids to help pinch back plants and the monotony of doing it. So I try and alleviate some of that concern with kids too. And they're more willing to help that way. But if they miss one, I can always tell, and they can always notice too if they miss one, because it'll keep growing up instead of starting to branch out and fill out. And they're like, oh, I missed that one. So they'll go back and pinch it later.
Is that how you eliminate since you're only using 4, the space in the middle?
Yeah.
Because I always end up with a big hole with holes in the middle.
I just make sure that it's like a 4 dice shape and going to round basket, and it does fill in. I don't ever have the hole in the middle. They fill in the root space, and I just make sure they're evenly spaced. I also talk about with the students exactly how to do that. And one of the things in the Google Drive that I put in there is our hanging basket combos I used last year. So we've developed, the students helped me develop recipes and what colors they want to have together. And then we call them by different names so that they can easily identify them and label them for people for plant sale. And we can pull the right ones if they're ordering online. So we had, fun names like Over the Rainbow, had 4 different colors of calibrachoa in it. We had, we complement each other, had blues and yellows and purples in it. And so each fun name was helped develop by students. So it's kind of, Show Me the Love was another one. They love that one.
So in those 4-inch pots that you're growing out for the baskets, are you planting like a Trixie liner would be with multiple ones in it, or the 4 that you're planting into the 12 come from your recipe?
They come from the recipes. Mm-hmm. So, and there are 4 different specific containers or 4 different plants. I don't plant the same plants in each container, except for the petunias, because petunias like to grow together. They don't like to grow with other things otherwise they overwhelm the other ones and they just don't grow. So yeah. Also during growing season, we remove flowers to encourage root growth and leaf growth. So we don't want color right away. I know it's pretty, and I tell the kids, oh, it's so pretty. I'm sorry, we got to take it off. And so they're really good though about finding those flowering buds and removing them. And then I'll make sure that I tell them, okay, we can't remove any more, okay? So 5 weeks out, don't remove any flowers from the plants because I want them to bloom. And that way we get our geraniums to bloom out and get more. And the more you initially remove them, the more they establish other flowers. You won't just have 1 flower at plant sale that's blooming out. You're going to have 4 or 5 blooms that are coming out for the zonal geraniums. It makes them a lot fuller and prettier as well for your customers. We check for insects and diseases during the growing season. We set up an insect monitoring system. We use the pest traps to house our insect monitoring system around the greenhouse. And they wear gloves and help me put them all up around the greenhouse. And they're really good about also checking to see what kind of insects they're catching. But it really helps us to eliminate the problem of them not noticing things. They're going to notice them because they're visual to them now. And so it really helps them help me monitor the greenhouse for us. We also set up a fertilizer schedule. I fertilize once a week for our schedule and water on the other days. And the biggest reason for that is just the pH level of our water to make sure I don't overwhelm them, but also the nutrients. And sometimes when you're fertilizing too much, the nutrients can become too bogged down in the soil, and you have to keep watering to release all of those things out of the soil. It can cause plant disorders and things like that too. So I fertilize once a week, and I use Miracle Grow fertilizer, you guys. So I use the slow release Miracle Grow for the baskets. I use the liquid feed on a hose with the plants. I used to use the overhead watering system, but then when we went to the big tomato plants and they were getting so large, if I turn on the overhead watering system in there, they have a tendency to get more blight, powdery mildew diseases because they don't like their leaves wet. So I have gone to that type of system to make sure that it's uniform throughout the greenhouse. And then 2 weeks before plant sale, I'll switch this fertilizer up to make sure that the flowers bloom out. So I'll use the bloom and flower one instead to make sure our flowers look really pretty for plant sale and really vibrant overall. I do that the 2 weeks prior, and some plants don't need it. Some plants, they're already beautiful and full, and others are like, come on, you can do it. So I'll give them that extra bloom and flower fertilizer 2 weeks out to make sure that they catch up. I do let my kids water, but I also teach them how to water and how not to water. And they help me water during class time. That'll be something as a skill I teach, is how to water. And that way they're watering correctly for me. I also make time to showcase plant growth to students. We talked about me showing them the root system, but that's how they know too when they're supposed to transplant, is when that root system is established. And that's how we can tell when to plant baskets, because the root system is established for those containers already. And I teach plant identification. I want the kids to know the plants when the customers come to plant sell. So they have a sheet that we use to help identify the plants. I will tell them exactly what plant or what things I want them to identify, and they have to go around the greenhouse and identify plants. And we keep them in a folder. All their stuff I give them, I keep in a folder in the greenhouse so they can use that out there as needed. Now, the weeks leading up to plant sale, we transplant any annual seedlings from start trays. So this is about 3 weeks out, I would say, is our starting point here. I transplant any annual seedlings from the start trays. You can see in this case how well established the root system is if you start them in those seed trays and then move them to the 6-pack, because they're going to take off fast once they get into a 6-pack if they have a really established root system to start with. And these plants, even though they're this small at this point 3 weeks out, they will still be, they'll grow to full size and be ready to sell in 3 weeks if you have a really good established root system. They might not always flower for me. I always have to push them a little bit. And these are lobelia, so you always got to push them anyway sometimes. But that's important. I also make sure I plant vegetable seeds. I used to plant them a little earlier. I used to plant them at 6 weeks into plant, before plant sale. And then they were getting too long and leggy and really kind of cumbersome for people to take home, and you had more problems with diseases getting on them and stuff. So 4 weeks out, I'll plant the cucumbers, the 2 types of cucumbers with the students, pumpkins and squash, so that they're small and established. They have, they have their true leaves going on, but they're not so big and cumbersome to take home. And the customers appreciate it. They're still gonna buy them, even though they're maybe smaller in size, because they didn't have to try and plant them themselves and wait for the progress. So we sell a lot of vegetable starts at our plant sale. I also have students help remove any dead material pretty often. We'll take containers. I'll just say, okay, guys, go grab a container. We're gonna start class today by moving some dead material, and they'll go with their group and they'll be assigned certain tables to help take the dead material off. And the ones where I notice a lot of dead material, I'll make sure I put my OCD kids on those ones, because they're gonna take off everything if it's problematic, and you'll have less problems also with your plants. We also cut back herbs if we need to, if we've grown those, and we donate them to either staff members in the staff lounge, or we've given them to the school kitchen to help with their, their kitchen program. I've also given them to our family consumer science teacher, and she uses them with cooking classes. So there's fun ways to do it and not have to be taking care of the burden when you have to cut them back. We also determine plant sale prices based on expenses. So if something adjusted that growing season and I needed to pay more for soil or containers or whatever it is, I make sure that I determine prices based on that. Plus, over spring break, I have students go and visit, they'll go out with their families and they'll go to Lowe's and they'll go to Home Depot and they'll go check out prices there. Like, Ms. Wickham, our plants are so much better. Like, I know, but it's okay. And it's okay that we might have a little bit lower price than them. It's not very much lower, honestly. Our plants are just as established as those growers are. So they help me determine prices and we figure that out. We also continue to engage our community with posts on email and Facebook and social media sites, and the students take pictures with their plants and post their favorite plants, so they help with that part. I also have to arrange for other adult help for plant sale. It's always great to have students, but there's only one of you, and it's nice to have other adults that, I will say adults that are helpful, because you can always get people to help with plant sale, but they might not always be the most helpful people in the world, or they might try to take over for the students and not let them help much. So I have pretty good staff I go to, and they have a lot of fun with the students too. We take final inventory in those weeks leading up to plant sale. It's really important to keep your inventory, because at any one time in the greenhouse, you need to know how much money you have into it in case something happens. Let's say that, for us, we had a problem with, if there's no power, there's also no heat, right? So, and we lose our power quite often in Deming with all of the storms and wind and everything else. And so one year we had power go out and there's snow on the ground and it's 30 degrees outside. And our maintenance guys are really great about, letting me know if the power goes out, because they live really close to the school, and they'll let me know. And as long as I didn't water them and kept the soil dry, they didn't freeze. So that was really helpful to know not to water them and then just kind of let them go. And as soon as the power came back on, then I could water them again. But it was a day and a half before the power came back on to the greenhouse. So it was pretty darn cold in that greenhouse. Thanks. It is. Yes, it's for an insurance purpose, but also for Mount Baker Student Industries. I need to know how much money we should make on plant sale to go back into our account. And it's really important for students to know how much money they have into this growing cycle, because each year, as we adjust prices or we change up what we're going to do, or if things maybe didn't sell out as well, then we also need to adjust the inventory for next year. And the kids could be part of that choice at the end. If something didn't sell as well, then okay, let's change up the inventory for next year. And I love that they get to be part of that process. Yeah.
Is that like school that you could be possibly refunded?
Yes.
I've had that happen and nobody offered me any solution.
It would be through the school district, but any years where we've had any loss of plant material, I take it as a hit from Mount Baker Student Industries. But if it was to be an entire greenhouse full of plants, we definitely need to know. Especially when we planned the greenhouse, we had to plan for snow load too, because there's been years where we've had 2 feet of snow on the roof of the greenhouse if the power was out and the snow wasn't melting off. So that structure is built to withstand snow load in particular. And we definitely have to know that for insurance purposes. Yeah. Now, the days before plant sale, this is the day before plant sale this last year. That's what the greenhouse looked like that students put together. And make sure to teach students about customer service. They need to know how to pull orders, how to identify plants correctly, and make sure that they're pulling the right orders for customers, especially since we went to an online system for plant sale. If we have inventory, if they pull the wrong plants, that means someone else didn't get it, kind of thing. So I teach them about customer service, how to interact with customers when we had in-person plant sales. We also set up signs for customers so they know exactly what's on each table and how to identify the plants correctly too, because that's the most common asked question is, what's this? What's this? And that really helps to alleviate some of the concerns leading up to plant sale. We also separate any trailing plants so that customers don't rip them apart as they're trying to get their own special one. So students help me separate all the trailing plants on the table, and then we'll put them back on the same table. But they display them nicely for the customers, so that that really helps. We remove any dead material to make sure that plants look healthy and are growing healthy. We also clean the floor, whether it's sweeping or taking the hoses to the floor and getting all the debris off. The customers really appreciate how clean we keep our facility. As Todd says, he jokes with me that we could eat off our greenhouse floor, but I don't think so. I think it keeps pretty messy. Yeah. And then also we arrange the plants for visual appeal. So you can see in our picture here that there's color in different spots. So it's not all green in one spot and all color in the other. We mix tables up so that plants look visually appealing to customers when they come into the plant sale, as well as for pictures when we do the online sale. I also have students, we put together plant sale reminders. So the kids help me create posts for email and social media to help with those. This last year, I wasn't able to have them video because we had to be too close together. But in previous years, I've had them, do videos, and then we post those to social media, and that's been fun. Last couple of years, it's just been me hanging out my greenhouse talking, but it still works. And then we develop a plan for customers to visit the facility and collect money. You definitely need to know, especially if you had a large group coming at one time, you need to have a route for them to enter and exit the greenhouse, or to have plants brought out to them to look at, or whatever it is. You want to develop a plan in advance so you're not rushing around trying to figure it out the day of the plant sale. It's really important for students also to be in on that plan and to help you develop it, because sometimes they're like the best ones with the ideas, honestly. So it's really great. And then I know we're getting close to our time, but I would love for you guys to be able to share out some things you're going to help do with your students. So what are you going to do to help students plan? If you could just take a few minutes. I know we're coming on lunch right now, but if you want to take a few minutes and talk to your groups, And then I'll just show you one more thing. This is the final results from students last year.
People don't come and shop in.
Not this last year, they
That's
didn't.
just because of COVID, but usually they would come in.
They would come in and shop.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, Christine. No. I want students to be able to move throughout the greenhouse and learn all the plants, not just the ones they're assigned. So although I might have them work in different tables to initially plant things and work together with their teams, I have them work all over the greenhouse. I don't want them to just be in little pods all by themselves all the time. Yes. Yep, that's right. And the table they set it on is the final table they grow on. I don't move them around unless we have to.
Actually,
Do you have a link to be willing to share?
Yes, I posted that to, I posted it like our 13-week schedule. I posted that in the Google.
Okay, thank you so much. Because I don't do as much from seed, but we're in the same climate. So I can do a little more. Tell me what they want.
They're little wooden sticks. They're like the caramel apple sticks, and they're pointed on one end. So they come down to a peak. So they make a little hole in each one of those.
And you mark like a quarter of an inch or half an inch with a Sharpie on it.
I can put it like I can mark with a Sharpie how far they go down. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Works awesome.
yeah,
And
and
then
then
there's
like, oh.
They're just
that's
literally-
that.
What a great activity.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you for coming, you guys. Is there any other questions? I'm sorry, we almost ran out of time again.
Thank you.
Oh, well, it's empty right now. But next spring, you're more than welcome to come. And I posted everything I talked about today, including some of the things, some other things in the Google Drive for this workshop. So you're welcome to go visit and ask me any questions you got. Thank you for being here.
You're so freaking
She needs a week off.
I have a question about,
Let me close this out real quick. So I'm not on Zoom anymore. Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, I gotta try and get back to it. And